For more on the story, we're joined exclusively by former Indian Finance Secretary Subhash Garg. Mr. Garg, thank you very much for your time here on Washington Watch. Mr. Garg, that CLSA research report says there that the benefit to India really, as far as cheap Russian oil goes, is far less than what has been portrayed previously, $2.5 billion as opposed to estimates of 10 to 25 billion. That kind of debunks Trump's claims. But on the other hand, I'd like to know if this still makes sense for India to be buying Russian oil because it's not as cheap as before. Do you think that if we stop, it would be caving into Trump and we'd be bullied further?
I think this computations of what actually the gains are is a very difficult thing to do. The easiest way probably the people will do is that on a day, what is the global or Dubai price for us, and on that day, what is the Russian price to us? And that discount is something which is taken as a kind of gain. Again, there is a question, I think that is what CLSA report also brings out, that this headline discount over the price and the landed cost to India, taking into account the shipping, insurance, and other kind of costs. So, in case we are actually able to compute the landed cost vis-a-vis Dubai to Russian oil, that is what should be taken as the real gain. That unfortunately is not easily available. So then that is where the estimates or the guesstimates take over. And someone will tell you that it's 10 billion, 25 billion. They don't do it in the annual context, while the CLSA report tells you about the annual context. And also that this is going down over the years and it's reducing. But all in all, so if Trump wants to use it as a kind of sword to sort of punish India for not agreeing for his tariffs, then he can use it. You can put any number; it doesn't make any difference.
Right. But Mr. Garg, which version are you buying if, so to speak, Russian oil is not as cheap as before?
At this moment, to my mind, it seems to be only about $3 to $4 per barrel as the effective discount, and any reduction in the price of crude which buy is worth it, and therefore India, which is buying Russian oil within the parameters set by the international sort of community, so to say, that you can buy Russian oil within the price cap, which has been set by the global community. I think that's not violative of any sort of international agreement or understanding. So that is what India should continue to buy. It's the objection is wrong. The objection should be removed rather than India be asked to do something which is not violative of any international understanding.
Mr. Garg, should India be walking away from these talks? Because if India earns about 11% of goods sent overseas as far as GDP goes, this is not including services, compared to, say, Vietnam, whose GDP earns about 85% of exports from sending goods overseas. Do you think that perhaps that India should maybe call it a day right now, maybe momentarily? There would be pain for sure, but it would not be insurmountable, so to speak, looking at those numbers.
Effectively, India has walked away. Whether we formally acknowledge it or not, effectively, India has walked away from doing the deal with Trump administration. In any case, no one can do any export or any trade when the tariffs are 50%. At that level, hardly any trade can take place. So, should India officially close it? If that is what you mean to say, I don't think in the international negotiations you should ever close the doors for negotiations. You should continue hoping that sanity prevails on the other side at some point of time. What I also personally feel is that India should do some revisiting of its stances. Should also look for whether what it's trying to save actually is worth saving or not. See, for example, let's say agriculture, right? And we say that we will not sort of open up for the GM oil or dairy products and all. If you drill down deeply, you would find that actually the farmers' interests are not hurt by if we start sort of rethinking about this. It's consumer preference only which comes in the way of consuming GM oil. So Indians here, the Indian consumer should also have even a choice. You can put a label on the imported American GM oil that this is from the GM seeds kind of thing. Whoever is not
Okay.
interested doesn't buy. So that is where I suggest we should do some rethinking rather taking very inflexible um, and obstinate position.
Mr. Garg, our Prime Minister, Mr. Prime Minister Modi, is meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping this weekend in Tianjin. What needs to happen there in order to soften the blow, really, from this Trump betrayal?
See, this is a bit unfortunate and more difficult thing to do it. We have had a relationship of enormous distrust with China and also enormous import dependence on China for the all the new industrial economy goods, whether it's computers, semiconductors, cells, solar cells, EVs, batteries, and things like that. That we can't do without importing from China. The choice before us has been, and this is not now, this has been there for quite many years, at least for a decade, is that should we permit Chinese companies to make investment into India to manufacture these goods, or should we only allow imports? I think our position that we have excluded Chinese investment in these areas has actually come to hurt. So, in this situation, new situation which has got created now, if we can think up of opening Chinese investment into these things in India, that perhaps may be even in the long term interest of the country and will reduce dependence on Chinese imports. So, but I don't see at this moment the Indian policymakers being ready for that. So if they don't get ready for this kind of departure or pivot against the earlier practice, not much will come out of the Chinese.
Mr. Garg, there have been calls for a boycott of US goods in India. How effective really is that? Because it's hard to see someone, say, giving up WhatsApp, which is, of course, owned by Meta, also not using iPhones if someone is an diehard iPhone fan, or for that matter, McDonald's. We forget that many of these franchisees, for example, in Noida, might be owned by an Indian businessman. So, in effect, it's actually hurting Indians in return.
There is no point. It's only a small fringe of Indians who talk about these things. It will. We did it to boycott Chinese product after that Galwan kind of thing. Nothing came out of it. Americans are far more integrated into the Indian consumption and the services in use. So it's an impossible thing to do it. I don't think we should go on that way at all. It's insane.
Subhash Garg, former Indian Finance Secretary, thank you very much for your time here on Washington Watch.